Hello and welcome. Today we're going to talk about something that affects almost every bank and insurer in Australia. CPS230, CPS220, and what those standards mean for your XLVBA. Across the industry, we see the same problem again and again. Organizations are being told that their critical spreadsheets must be decommissioned simply because they contain VBA. And the reasons are always the same. VBA gets labeled single person dependent, lacking version control, vulnerable to formula drift, poorly governed, and insufficiently secure. And once those labels are applied, the workbook becomes classified as high risk, and that brings higher capital charges under CPS 230 and CPS 220. So, some teams end up writing everything into ERP systems or complex data warehouses just to meet governance. But what if I told you this? You don't have to scrap your VBA. You don't have to rebuild everything in an ERP. You can keep your existing Excel workflows and still be fully CPS 230, 220 compliant. That's exactly what D4E makes possible. D4E offers 3 levels of governance hardening. Each level progressively reduces operational risk and pushes your VBA closer to ERP grade governance. Let's walk through them. In this flowchart, level 1 are your governed D4E stores. In level 1, VBA is not stored as code. Instead, it's stored as plain text inside Excel columns. For example, inside MS SQL column A or REST column B. This means the whole workbook is actually a pure XLSX file with 0 macros inside it. Why is this important? Because it gives you all the governance benefits of a structured system. No executable code, version control via SharePoint, migration and release control, audit trails, no ad hoc formula changes, no one-person key dependency. Your VBA becomes data, not executable script. And because execution happens only inside the controlled engine of D4E, level 1 alone is enough to eliminate most CPS 230, 220 findings. Now in level 2, we have precompiled XLAM library that are enterprise safe. Now, some enterprise block the execution of level 1 because they forbid programmatic VBA injection, dynamic code creation, and XLAM manipulation. When that happens, this D4E upgrades to level 2. Here, D4E does something powerful. It reads the same user VBA from the D4E stores, compiles it into a locked XLAM library, and secures that file under SharePoint, and runs it without injecting VBA into the workbook. This satisfies organizations that block programmatic VBA while still letting you use your business critical logic. You get central versioning, controlled release pipeline, no dynamic module creation, significantly reduced operational risk. It's the same VBA code in level 1, but now governed like an enterprise add-in. Next, in level 3, we have hardened COM-DLL, which is basically the VBA, becomes a C language, becomes a binary. Finally, level 3 is the strongest level of governance. Here, D4E takes your XLAM and converts the logic from VBA to the C language to a COM-DLL library. This means there is no VBA anywhere. The code cannot be altered. Even a memory dump records only compiled machine code. And the artifact behaves like a small, controlled ERP component. This level is suitable for the strictest CPS230-220 interpretation and for teams with zero tolerance for macro code. In summary, let's show this in a pyramid. Level 1 are your D4E stores, XLS, they're governed and they're fully auditable. Level 2 is your precompiled XLAM for a controlled enterprise library. And level 1 is the highest, where you have COM-DLL, fully hardened and binary only. These levels turn your VBA into artifacts that behave much closer to enterprise grade or ERP grade calculators than spreadsheets. Instead of punishing your spreadsheet logic with capital add-ons, D4E upgrades it into a well-governed, well-controlled, and fully detectable form. So, in closing, if your organization is facing CPS 230, 220 VBA decommissioning pressure, D4E gives you a way to keep your logic, keep your knowledge, and keep Excel as the user interface while still meeting all governance requirements. In the next part of the demo, we will walk through how D4E actually performs these conversions step by step in several examples. Let's begin. So here we have in sheet MySQL 5 columns of code A to E. In previous videos, we have seen how this code can be created by D4E AI or manually by developers. Now, we want to know how they are executed in the different levels. So in level 1, the codes are in a D4E store called MySQL with these 5 columns of data. Normally, we are currently in edit mode, and we can see that over here, and therefore we can actually see the D4E store called MySQL. But when we are in run mode, we will not see this. We will only see and be able to reference the menu items corresponding to the 5 columns of code. The menu items we've seen in previous video is in here, or also in the ribbon here, and can be executed that way or among other things as well. So let's execute the first column, first code, just to show that we are executing it from the D4E store. So some data is being created. And a sheet has been created, as we have seen in other videos. But we just want to confirm the levels of running. So if you go look at menu log, it gives you a clue that what was being executed was from the D4E store. And it says executing, or will execute VBA code, and will complete it. And in fact, it has removed the module that it when it created the VBA code on the fly. So that would be demonstrating level 1, which is executing normally from a D4E store. And we'll now demonstrate to level 2. The difference here is that in level 2, we don't want to execute using VBA injection, which is what happened in level 1. If you can see, the clue here is that it was injected and it was now being removed. We don't really want to see that injection from a level 2 point of view. So let's try and demonstrate level 2. So in level 2, we can see there is a precompiled version, and let's assume that is the case, and we will execute the third code, because in the third code it has a note there to force the execution of an XLAM, and we will see evidence of that when we actually execute it. So let's go back to executing it, and let's say the user tried to create C, and in this case, instead of executing from the D4E store, it will execute from the compiled XLAM. So we see a file was created. That's all we need to know for now, that it worked. But we want to see the evidence that the way it worked was to execute a compiled VBA. So this was our log so far. In this previous step, we were executing a normal VBA, and in this next step, we can see we are forcing and we are executing a compiled VBA from an XLAM file. So from an XLAM file, that's where you got the VBA code, completed it, ran it, for whatever reason we can see at the moment. So that is level 2 execution. So now let's try to execute level 3, which is a hardened version of the VBA library. We will execute the same menu item option as before, but before we do that, we currently have in our VBA library a plain version. So let's replace that with the compiled version. This will replace it, so that because the command is the same, and we have evidence that it is now getting the library from a different location, which happens to have the compiled version or the COM-DLL version of the plain VBA. And the COM-DLL version of the compiled version is a hardened version. It uses a third-party tool to convert VBA to C code, to C language, and then create executables out of it. But now we've created that and we're now using it. So we're ready to basically do the same thing we did in level 2. because the user will only see these commands. He's trying to try executing it again, but underneath is a hardened version, and it looks the same BAU procedure for our business users. So let's click that. And it should basically do the same thing from what we did previously. There's no change because it is still compiled version. The only difference is that our compiled XLAM functionally the same as the non-hardened version. The hardened version is functionally the same as the non-hardened version. And so we will see the same messages. So we now look at the logs and evidence that the compiled XLAM is also good. It's also used. This should be good in debugging. So to summarize our demonstration, we have seen the 3 levels of executing VBA code with increasing compliance to CPS230 and 220. If your organization is facing CPS 230, 220 VBA decommissioning pressure, D4E gives you a way to keep your logic, your knowledge, and Excel as the user interface while still meeting all governance requirements. Thank you very much and see you next time.